So you were finance minister in 1998, and you came out with the Resurgent India bond. And in your book, you mentioned that changed the global perception in the country's favor. In this government, the Nirmala Sitharaman came out with an idea that faced a lot of backlash to issue sovereign bonds in order to finance the deficit of the country from overseas market in dollars. So what do you have to say about that idea? Why it's facing a lot of backlash, and what's your take on that?
There's a world of difference between what I did and what she is proposing to do. In 1998, just to give you a brief background, we were facing the East Asian crisis. On top of it, we went for the nuclear tests. So our foreign exchange reserves had started to deplete, and we had to do something about it. Because we had done the nuclear tests, I knew that there was no way in which we could have gone to the IMF for any assistance. In fact, both the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank and other lenders which were commercially lending to Indian corporates, they had all frozen any loans to India. So this was the situation that I was facing: depleting foreign exchange reserves and complete absence of avenues that we could have explored to shore them up. Right? Now, I was traveling for the IMF World Bank meeting to Washington. On the way, I stopped in London, met with investors there. I met with investors in New York, also in Washington. And I'd like to tell you today that all or most of the investors suggested that India should go for sovereign bonds. I came back, I discussed this proposal with my officers, and we all agreed, including the Reserve Bank, and we all agreed that sovereign bonds was not a good idea. It exposed the country in a manner which was very, very dangerous. So therefore, because we had to shore up our foreign exchange reserves, we came out with the Resurgent India bonds. Now, who issued these bonds? The State Bank of India. And who contributed to the Resurgent India bonds? Non-resident Indians and persons of Indian origin. It was restricted to them, not to foreign funds. So, if you compare the two, then we came out with the Millennium Bonds. Compare the two. One, it was not a sovereign bond. The government of India's prestige was not on the line. Two, we did it in order to shore up our foreign exchange reserves, which is not the situation today. We have over $420 billion of foreign exchange reserves. So who can say that we need to add to our reserves? The argument that the government has given is that borrowing in India is more expensive, and therefore we'll borrow cheap abroad.
And they are also saying that external debt to GDP ratio is also
reasonable, moderate. Now, they can't be giving two contradictory arguments at the same time. One, they are saying that we'll borrow about $10 billion only. Okay? $10 billion is neither here nor there. In the huge economy of India, a borrowing of $10 billion is neither here nor there. It's not going to make a huge difference to the interest rate structure in the market. Two, that it is not, because it's small, it's not going to impact on the interest rates. Therefore, the argument that interest rates will be brought down and that government of India will open a window to borrow abroad at lower cost does not wash. It just does not wash. On the other hand, India will be exposed, the government of India, the Indian nation will be exposed to the vagaries of international finance. And you never know what's going to happen. Things are extremely uncertain at this point of time. With the US-China trade war going on, with Trump in office in the US and doing all kinds of things, global slowdown biting now?
No.
Very difficult to say how the international economy and the international financial architecture is going to behave in the future years.
Sir, while going through a book, I came across a fact that you mentioned while presenting a budget of 2002. You imposed a tax on the dividend that attracted wrath of the rich people, and that is one of the reasons you were moved to External Affairs Ministry. And in this budget also, Nirmala Sitharaman increased the surcharge on super rich people. So that is a kind of a anti-super rich tax, you can say. And also the tax on the buyback shares. So do you think that the proposing these measures to like anti-rich measures, do you think that this government is also going to meet the same destiny?
No, I don't think so, because we were living in liberal, more accommodating times in those days in 2002. And people, rich people had the courage to protest against a measure which they did not like. I don't think I was wrong in not imposing a tax on dividend. Dividends were already being taxed. But the only difference I made was that instead of being taxed at 10% across the board, I said it will be taxed at the rate which was applicable to the individual. So suppose you were paying 10%, you will still pay 10% on your dividend earnings. If you are paying 20%, you will pay 20% on your dividend income. If you are paying 30%, you will pay 30% on your dividend income. Now, most rich people have managed their investments in such a way that they receive it in tax-free instruments. And some of the richest people in India did not pay any income tax, personal income tax. So I came out with this idea. People didn't like it. And, I have said it also in this book and elsewhere that when Mr. Vajpayee and I were discussing this issue of my transfer to another ministry, he told me that it was a question of perception. The perception was that Yashwant Sinha had not done the right thing by taxing dividends in this way. So I moved to External Affairs, right? Today, the rich people do not have the courage to speak up. The corporates do not have the courage to tell the truth. Nobody in this country has the courage to tell the truth. Fear stalks the land. And therefore, rich or poor, everyone is quiet, except standing up and clapping for the government.
And so like from your perspective, is this the right move to tax super rich people at such an exponential level that we have reached to a point that we are taxing among the highest in the world?
It was with great difficulty that a few things were done during the liberalization years. One was that as we accepted as a matter of principle that we as a country will not go for import substitution. So we started reducing our customs duties. And we said to the Indian industry, you have to compete. Don't look to government for protection through tariffs. That is a liberal idea that we have given up. Arun Jaitley's budget earlier and this budget both have gone back on that understanding. That's point number one. Point number two is income tax rates were fixed by Chidambaram, 10%, 20%, 30% in his budget of 1997. After that, we had not touched the rates. There would be surcharges here and there for specific purposes, but the rates were not touched. Now, through the surcharge, we have increased the rates in a manner which appears as if we are punishing those who have done well in life, And we are doing it at a time which was the most inappropriate time for this kind of a move. So I don't know what is the economic philosophy of this government. Are we going back to the protectionist days? Are we going back to those days when we thought that through higher taxation we'll punish the rich and help the poor? What are we trying to do? It is axiomatic that moderate rates of taxes get you more revenue than steeper rates of taxes. But this government doesn't seem to believe in that.
So in your book, you have also talked about the ending of autonomy of certain institutions like the CBI, and you have also talked about the RBI in particular. So, and you have also said that there is an undeclared emergency in the country, and the fear are far more than the emergency period in during Indira Gandhi. So, how can you throw light on this?
No, I have also mentioned all the institutions of democracy, starting with the Parliament of India. And it's relevant to talk about the Parliament of India. Look at what's happening in Parliament today. The opposition is weak. The opposition is protesting. It's falling on deaf ears. And the government is doing exactly what it wants to do. With Parliament and with the bills and all that. So Parliament. Then you have the judiciary. I've talked about the judiciary. I've said the Supreme Court is in a crisis. And clearly the letter written by the Unnao rape victim should have been presented to the Chief Justice. Should not have been lost in the system for 2 weeks. So there are so many things which are wrong. Supreme Court itself now is trying to improve procedures, etc. Incidentally, our case has been argued on Rafale, and the judgment is pending. So we're waiting for the judgment. So Supreme Court, Parliament, Supreme Court, then RBI. 2 governors went away. You know, I don't want to make a personal comment on the current one. We leave it at that. Then government is attacking the reserves of Reserve Bank of India. They want SEBI to do the same. CBI, I have mentioned. Election Commission, I have mentioned. So take all these, major institutions of democracy, and you will find that each one of them has been compromised. Each one of them today is bending before the government and carrying out the government's diktat. So, there is an undeclared emergency in this country. And also, if you permit, I'd like to add, Indira Gandhi's emergency in 1975 was a political step. Today's emergency is undeclared, and it is an emergency of the type Indira Gandhi had, plus it has a huge communal overtone. Huge communal overtone. And that's why some people are lapping it up.